All right. Well, hello, Paula. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah,
How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
For sure.
Yeah,
Went line dancing last night.
did. Yeah,
You a little sore climbing up here to the
just a
studio.
little bit. Yeah, but was working on the house, so
Yeah.
I ended up stretching a little more.
Keep moving. Can't stop.
No,
You may not start again.
that's right.
No, I want to, first of all, just really want to thank you. Usually I wait till the end because maybe I'm not going to be so thankful, but for your um, willingness and courage to tell us some of your story. As people will find out, you have a life full of them, of struggles that
Yeah,
you got your Kleenex ready to go.
I
So,
do.
um,
My
and,
eyes are turning
and if you
green.
really bawl, like Steve can edit it out. Although we always say that and he forgets. So Steve, mark it down. Um, and but I just want to, because I think it's important for people to hear your story because some of it is you wouldn't normally talk about, or at least in detail.
Right.
And that's what's good about this podcast is that people can see. Oh, I see Paula. She's so nice and cheerful at church. She has her
Per-
taking pictures. She's
Person behind the camera.
yeah,
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 and you're probably thinking, I don't know, nice, lady's been around a little while, but she's probably, and those things are true, but you don't always see what you someone's gone through and what God has gotten somebody through,
right, right.
And I think it all really begins when you were a child. Tell me a little bit about like because you've mentioned to me your dad some things he drank and
Yeah.
some difficulties in that relationship and that might have kind of got things started,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. So what was that like?
I was probably about 10 years old, and I remember my my mom had a big fight with my dad in the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
and afterwards she was all black and blue. And
Mm-hmm.
what she told me, she came to my bedroom door and said, Crawl out the window, go across the street, and have her friend call the police." So I did. And I remember looking out my neighbor's window, and I could see my dad out on the front lawn. Basically, what they call it now is PTSD, because he was in World War II
Mm-hmm.
with a shotgun, you know.
How
And
many years after this would have been the war? I mean, he must have went when he was 18, 19, or was he a little older?
my dad,
Yeah.
well, I was probably about 7 or 10, so he went to the war in 1944,
Mm-hmm.
so probably, I can't do it in my head without my
Was he
calculator.
married? He wasn't married till after he got back, right? Or was he already married when he went?
He was married when he went.
Okay.
That's another story.
Were you born yet?
No,
Okay.
I was born I was born in 1950, so
So your whole childhood is dealing with a dad who clearly, as many who returned from the war, suffered with what we now know as PTSD. They
yeah.
didn't really necessarily have that term. And so that you really didn't know your dad other than that. So when you say he was doing, like, was he just didn't know where he was when as you were looking out the window, or was he?
He was reenacting being in the war.
Uh,
After my dad passed away, my mom told me,
it's okay.
my mom told me after my dad used to crawl in bed with me naked when I was real little.
Mm. You don't remember
I don't remember that. Nope.
it. Mm.
And she told me that after the fact.
How did she know that?
She
She's
probably used to come in the room and see him and probably tell him to get out, you know.
yeah. And you have a brother, other
I
siblings?
have a brother, he's 2 years younger,
Okay.
and um, you know, events happened after all of this. Uh, Somebody actually,
Did your mother share, just to kind of bring it back to the PTSD? Did she share later on, was an event, obviously that was a pretty extreme event. You're crawling out of your window, calling the police. But did it happen regularly where she had to, kind of flee from him because he didn't know where he was, or was that like sort of a unique?
she was um, she was stopping him from coming in the room again.
Okay.
So yeah,
Oh,
she put a stop to it.
yeah.
That's why she was all black and blue.
Mm,
My some friends of my mom and dad's. I was over at my aunt's house, and the friends they asked me if I wanted to come in and live with them, and I said no, because I had no clue as to why.
mm.
You know,
What do you think? How would you? Because you didn't know any of this was going on at the time, right? But how would you characterize your relationship with your dad, or even with your parents in general? Did you feel like it was a normal childhood, or was it difficult?
it was a normal childhood. Yeah,
Mm,
I rode horses. My dad worked, very hard.
yeah.
He built 3 houses. Actually, you know, he didn't show me love
Mm,
until when I was up here, because I moved to Florida, and I came up here and I knew that it was his time pretty soon.
yeah.
And I told him that I loved him.
Mm,
And he said, What's that? He wanted me to repeat it. And then he said, I love you too.
mm,
But that's the only time
mm.
that I heard him say that.
And
But
how
he
about?
but I think he loved in other ways,
Yeah.
you know, giving, very giving.
Mm,
And I think that that's me.
yeah.
You know, I
Yeah. It is.
I love in other ways, whether it's
How about your mom? How was your relationship with your mom?
my mom had a better relationship with my brother.
Yeah.
I think fathers love their daughters and
Yeah.
mothers love their sons.
Does tend to work that way pretty well. Yeah.
You know, my dad probably for 20 years, he used to drink and he
Mm-hmm.
quit drinking. And then something just triggered it again.
Yeah.
My brother ended up being an alcoholic too.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, my my mom quit smoking but started drinking. One vice to another.
Yeah.
But I ended up meeting somebody and divorcing. You know, moved to Florida.
Why do you think your mom shared that about your dad? About crawling into bed with you? And I'm not saying she was right or wrong. Just what do you think the motivation? Because it was later on.
I think maybe she knew that there was troubling. Something was troubling me.
Mm,
I think she wanted it off her chest too.
yeah.
You know,
She probably felt pretty guilty herself.
right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, as you as you saw on little things that I wrote,
Yeah.
things just kept on happening to me.
Yeah. When did you move to Florida? You said you got divorced. So your marriage, did that happen after you moved, or?
No, before.
Okay.
Yeah, my
So
dad,
how old were you when you got married?
21. Yep.
And how did that marriage, was it ever good, or was it
No,
no?
no communication.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We were married for probably 8 years. My dad gave me next door to the house I grew up in, gave me an acre and a half of land and built a house for me.
Wow. Wow.
And
And how long were you married to him?
I was married for 8 years, but it took me 3 years to get a divorce because he wanted half the money for the house, and I said no.
Yeah.
That was back in 1981. Finally got my divorce. But yeah. So I've been
Why do you think you married him? Thought you were in love?
thought, yep, thought,
Yeah.
yep. He ended up having a bad temper, and left one job and went to another. And he ended up. I went to Florida for a vacation and came back, and he said, "I don't love you anymore. I want to leave." Come to find out, he had an affair and had a 2-year-old kid.
Oh my goodness. Well, where was the child? Nearby?
They were local, yep. And putting everything together, he wanted to move to Seattle. I'm like, you just don't pack up and leave. You go on a vacation and see what it's like.
Yeah.
So I
Seattle.
said no.
Yeah.
I ended up paying him some money for the house. And then within like 4 months, I put the house on the market and sold and moved to Florida. But yeah,
How come Florida? What brought you there? Did you have friends there, or
no friends.
just
Nope,
wanted good weather?
just, yeah, just wanted to, I had met somebody, was a tennis pro, lived down there. So, sold my house,
Yeah.
moved down there, and I bought another house. But
How did you meet the tennis pro?
I used to work for a YMCA. I won't mention the name of it.
Yeah.
I was a membership director and did the front desk area. He was a tennis pro there.
Okay.
So
So
yeah,
this is after you moved to Florida and you got a job doing that.
that was before I moved to Florida when I met him
Oh, you
up
met
here.
him up here.
Up here.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So and then I knew where he lived. So but I actually got a job down there at the YMCA.
Hmm.
So, but yeah,
So you left him when you went down there, like you weren't
right.
dating him anymore.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
no.
So, all of this, pretty much any church, any faith at this point, any like childhood, and like were you doing this without the Lord? Sounds like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even though I was, born again 45 years ago,
Yeah. This is before
but
that.
I backslid.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then I went through, a couple jobs down there, and then a few years later, I found a church down there.
So when you say you were born again, when was that?
That was in 1980.
So you're
It was right after my divorce.
right.
Yeah.
And what
When
was that like?
I was on fire. I remember just burning up when I accepted the Lord.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Just yeah. I went to my mom's church.
Yeah.
It was up here.
Yeah. And did you feel like, what was it like, given what you'd gone through? You got your relationship with your dad, which has got to be a bit odd, whether you knew why or not. And then you have the divorce, and you're going through all that alone. And now all of a sudden, you're like you said, you're on fire, but you also, it's like, I'm not going through this alone anymore. What was that? What was that like?
Down in Florida?
No,
No.
here when you first came to Christ.
Um, I don't really remember.
Yeah.
You know,
Didn't sound
I,
like it took. So when you moved to Florida, you kind of left that. Why do you think? You just couldn't find a church right away, or why did you backslide?
um, I ended up meeting somebody at the beach, um, and he um, he pursued me um, within the, I used to, because I played volleyball at
Mm-hmm.
the YMCA. I used to play volleyball at the beach,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, he pursued me where um, I felt I felt love,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, and that's one of the big things I think that I crave is, and then um, I ended up moving in with him.
So that became sort of your focus. This guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, he was a drug addict.
Did you know that before you moved in?
No,
Did you know he did drugs? We just thought he
he
or
said he was got a little crazy once in a while. And I
who
didn't know,
who doesn't, right?
I didn't
Who
know
just
what
get
he
a little
meant.
crazy once in a while, but that's a little different thing than
Yeah. So,
drug addict on what pills or things like that, or
I think it was cocaine.
yeah, probably back then because that's
Yeah.
we're talking still 80s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It wasn't fentanyl.
yeah, no,
No,
no, and
no.
I
But,
hate to say thank God for cocaine because there's nothing good about that either, but you can quit that.
yeah, he was a fireman.
Mm.
So he'd work, I think it's work 24 on or whatever it is and 3 days off. So that was the 3 days is when he did his drugs. So, and
Oh, if you go on a big time bender.
yeah,
So let's pause for a second. So, you come to Christ after your divorce. You're on fire. You're going to your mom's church. And so when you decide to move to Florida, how much time went by after the divorce to moving? Not a lot of time. Was it a few years? Was it kind of right away? You wanted a new start?
um, there's probably, I had a house I had bought. It was probably like a year or two.
Yeah, not too long though.
Yeah. And I actually, I tried to help him. I went to a place down there that had said that trust is earned, it's not a gift,
Yeah.
and I kept that. And
When you
but
when you were going to Florida, obviously, I'm assuming you hadn't backslidden yet. So you were probably like, hey, I'm going to find a church. I'm going to, in Florida, that's not hard um, to find a good church, right? There's a lot of them. Um, so what would you say? I bring this up because I've been doing this a while. And one of my frustrations with like young adults, and at that point, you're still 20, almost 30, maybe 30-ish, so still pretty young, right? But had been married and everything and divorced, so just that matures you, right? But even so, like it's like we'll see people who come to church and it's both guys and ladies, but I see this more with ladies over the years, where it's like you see them like, oh, this is great, and like they're like coming to church and you see God moving in their life, right? And then it's like they disappear. It's almost always a guy. Like when that happens, that doesn't always happen, but when it does, I'm always like, where? And then you see, we have social media now, right? So like, people don't just disappear in thin air. A lot of times, you can kind of see what's going on with them, and you can see pictures of some guy, and it's like, and it's just so. I don't get angry. I just get so sad. I'm like, that's not gonna. It's the wrong guy. The right guy's Jesus,
right.
and then everything from that. So, what would you say to your younger self who did that? Obviously, the drug addict. We'll get into that. That's a horrible thing. But even if, let's say, he wasn't a drug addict, he was just a firefighter and didn't really care about the Lord and whatever, like, what would you say to your younger self now about kind of moving in with this guy instead of continuing to pursue
I
where?
think I think just continue with believing in God and reading the Bible, staying away from sheep and or wolves in sheep clothing or whatever.
Yeah.
Give yourself some time, I think, to grow and just focus more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let God decide, show you.
yeah. I've actually, I used to, I prayed, God, please show me who was meant for me. And I dreamt that night, but didn't see his face.
Yeah.
And I actually woke up laughing. I'm like, okay.
Thanks, Lord. That's not going to help me. I need a picture. Yeah. So, you, uh, you mentioned as you were telling that story that you feel like you always just sort of like wanted to be loved. You know, first of all, I don't think that's uncommon, and that's why I do, especially amongst our ladies, and I think guys do too. But I think it manifests itself a little bit differently typically. But late for it's almost like they're it's why every you know, at least when Disney was still good, had movies. There's a Prince Charming. There's a Prince for the Princess, right? Like it appeals to girls. It always does, always has.
Right.
And like, why do you think that is from your experience? What were you looking for, and why? Because that clearly captivated you. Some guy pursued me. He wants me, right?
Right.
To the point of overlooking probably some signs that you later found out.
Um, it's hard, it's I think needing the affection and the attention,
Yeah.
you know, but it's hard to talk about it because I really don't know. It's just looking for something,
Yeah.
you know. Uh,
Yeah.
so, but yeah,
Do
I
you feel, because you live alone now, do you still, now that you're older, do you still feel like that? Or you're like happy as a clam that I don't have to deal with that?
I have my moments,
Of course.
you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Being
yeah,
alone's not easy. When it, you know, you're obviously not alone, but you have people in your life,
right.
but living alone.
Living alone, my age,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. I try to keep busy now, you know. So,
Well, I think it's important because I mentioned young women, but I've also seen that happen in middle age and older, especially if they become widow or they never it never happened, you know, or divorced, like in your case, because it's never easy to be alone, and it's never easy to feel like, does someone really love me, right?
yeah,
Like, and and we're meant to be loved, like God, like it's clear, love Him, love one another, not just in a romantic way, but that's obviously the deepest love you have, or where you truly give yourself to that person.
mm,
We're meant to do that. So it's I think it's a good thing. But when we get in front of the Lord, which is what happened to you in Florida and happens to so many, man, we can so easily ruin the plan that He has for us.
yeah.
But it is hard, isn't it?
But,
To wait and say, well, God, if I have to wait till I'm 45 or 55, I'll do it. Like, that's tough, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I climbed out of the window at the drug addict's house. Did that one again. I
Yeah.
had
Like, this is kind
uh,
of a pattern in your life. You're climbing out of windows way too much, Paula. Let's stop.
I
So tell
left.
me about that. So you move
Yeah.
in. How long? So then you started to realize, okay, the days he's off from his firefighting, he's just like, he's partying with friends. How did he, or did he do it by himself? Did he try to involve you?
Um, he did it with friends, not the drugs. He did that at home.
Okay.
And I don't know if I could put myself out there, but he was a Metro-Dade lieutenant in the fire department down in Florida.
Mm.
And I remember getting to the point where I got to do something, trying to get, I had all my furniture and everything there, moved everything in. I mean, I would leave, but then I'd call him on the phone and he'd beg me to come back in, but I'd go back in the house and everything was all torn up. He just went crazy.
Yeah.
And I remember he was in the kitchen. I was sitting in a chair in the kitchen. And I kept on saying, God protect me, God protect me, over and over in my mind. I felt like I was protected.
Yeah.
And then he went off into the other room. He left. So I crawled out the window one day. I actually had a warm-up suit with a zipper and kept my keys in the car in my pocket. And I drove away.
Why did you feel like you needed to climb out of the window?
It was the only, he would have the door blocked or whatever with furniture out the front.
Really?
Yeah.
Often he would do this?
Every time he was off for that amount of
He would
time.
block the door and wouldn't let you out.
Right. So, I mean, he tried to get me to say we were married and change my checking account to a married name, and I said no. I kept my money.
Good.
Yeah. But
How long did that go on?
probably about 8 or 9 months. So I had that house I bought, and I was renting it out.
Right.
And whether God did it or not, they decided they were going to move out of the house, so it went back there.
Did he try to get you back?
No.
He didn't?
Nope.
You crawled out and you never heard from him again?
I had a friend of mine, because I used to scuba dive when I worked at the Y. And I think he called the police after I left, and he was arrested and actually lost his job down in Florida, in Miami. Lost his job. But I ended up getting all of my stuff back. I don't know who delivered it. It was on the patio in the back. The only thing he kept was a Bible that my mom had given me when I accepted the Lord. And my mom said, good, it might do him some good.
You've never heard any updates since?
No, I haven't. I haven't even bothered,
No, that was smart.
Once in a while I'll think about, searching to see where he is.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, didn't. So that was one of the trying things in my life,
You mentioned somewhere in your notes that you were abused on a farm? Was that as a kid?
Yes.
How old were you then? What happened?
I was probably about 12. It was right after, when my dad had his problems.
Yeah.
And I was molested by a farmer.
Were you working on the farm?
No. A couple of my neighbors up here went with me down. My mom and dad had a cottage, and they came down for a week or whatever it was. And we went next door to a dairy farm, and that my grandfather had a dairy farm. So I was curious, walking around looking at the cows, and
Sure.
the farmer came up behind me. So, and then the two girls that were visiting came running around the corner of the barn, saw it, and then went back to my cottage. And my mom, I went back to the cottage, and my mom put me in the car and brought me over to the farm and just reamed him up and down,
Yeah.
Yep. And my dad never did anything. That was the thing that I thought about, how come you didn't do something?
Yeah, that's Dad's job.
Yeah, yeah.
Why do you think?
I don't know whether it was guilt, you know.
Mm.
Yeah,
That's probably a key moment for you because, well, it's definitely a key moment. I mean, a horrible thing like that happens. I don't mean to sound like I'm downplaying it, but I mean a key moment as far as why you started kind of, you had this stuff going on with your dad, which you didn't really understand at the time, but that doesn't mean you didn't, right? Like it wasn't affecting you. You just didn't understand it. Now this thing happens at the farm, and it's like immediately, like, do you feel, and I know it's a long time ago, so it's okay if you don't remember. Do you feel like anything shifted for you after that event as far as how you viewed people, how you trusted people? Or did you just try to,
yeah. I pushed it aside.
yeah,
Yep, pushed it aside.
that had to have impacted you.
What's that?
That had to have impacted you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just, I remember my the girlfriends. Uh, my mom brought them home back up here,
Mm.
you know, and I see pictures of me when I was younger,
Mm.
and it wasn't very happy, back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was, you know, things that I remember being in school, in elementary school, and I must have had an anxiety attack or something. My mom took me to a psychiatrist, and he said I had school phobia.
What kid doesn't?
But I'm sure that those two things that happened to me, and then I had a male teacher, sort of hit me.
Hit you?
Well, no, he didn't hit me. It just
Oh,
had,
you had a male teacher and you realized I'm scared.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it was an anxiety attack because I just got up and walked out of the room.
Yeah.
Went to the nurses, and just sat there and couldn't talk. I couldn't talk about it because I knew a little bit about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it was a different day too, but I still think the temptation for people, I don't know what the latest statistics are, but it's definitely over 50% of girls have been abused in some way, sexually or physically, which is disgusting and shows you the evil that we try to pretend isn't out there. But as
Yeah.
believers, we know how evil works, and to prey on the most vulnerable is how it always works. Kids, women, babies. You look in the Bible, it's always the most vulnerable, and evil uses those who should be protectors become abusers. And I'm not excusing it because it's like we still have the choice,
Mm.
but it's the same old story. But I mention that because I think we're gonna have people watch this who maybe have been abused and haven't talked about it or said I can just ignore it. What would you say to that person?
That was one of the things that, I've been thinking about
Mm.
is, if you're in that type of relationship, the things that you have, all the things, when you die, you're not taking those with you.
No.
So you need to just up and leave.
Believe.
Think about and make a plan, and get with friends and have them help you,
Yeah.
and just get away from it. Yeah,
Mm.
it's you know a, there was another drug addict, but when I moved back up here, and I went into the same thing.
Pattern.
Yep, same pattern.
But maybe it starts though with getting help, which wasn't your fault that you didn't, because that again is probably a different time, and when stuff like that happened, people just was like, well, just move on. But thankfully we're a little bit different now. Still can happen though. And so it's embarrassing. You end up blaming yourself. Maybe some of it's my fault. I'm talking about the farmer now, not the boyfriend. But you trying to just move on from that.
Yeah.
Like, it's not possible.
It's hard.
Yeah. I mean, you can move on, but you're carrying some stuff.
Right.
Deeply is going to impact you.
I know. I sent you an email and you said that's pretty heavy stuff, Paula. And that wasn't half of what you read.
Yeah. That was my introduction to it.
Yeah.
And I said that there was really no other way of characterizing it. And I think if we have anyone, a young person or not, who's experienced abuse as a child, even if it's years ago, like go see someone. Even if it starts with your pastor, but see a counselor, see somebody, because it's like, I'm not saying they can cure it. I mean, sometimes it's just a sinful, broken world, and that's what God's grace is. We'll get to is all about. But like, don't feel like, oh, it's no big deal. It is a big deal.
Yeah.
And it is somebody taking advantage of something in the worst possible way.
Yeah.
And it's pretty tough to, or if not impossible, to walk away from that unscathed. So when you have a wound like that, you want to get help, not try to cover it over, because then it just gets infected.
Yeah.
you know, and then you make, and I'm not blaming all of that on some of your poor decisions back then, but that's part of it.
Yeah.
You didn't really know what real love. Someone shows you affection. Okay. Yeah. And it's like,
Yeah.
got to be more in place than that.
I work for a county office down there, and moved to Dallas from the county office.
Is this right after you left, or a little bit?
It was a little bit after.
Okay.
Yeah, I went from the YMCA to, I got my real estate and appraisal degree in college down there, and was still with the county office as down there they call it a property appraiser's assessor.
Why'd you move to Texas?
The company that had installed the software for the county office asked me to come and work for them.
Oh, okay.
So
You made an impression. Yeah.
when I got there, I found out that the software that they had sold the county office wasn't working. I had a house that I had bought a bank foreclosure, beautiful home. And,
Whereabouts in Dallas? I mean, in Texas. Was it Dallas?
In Dallas.
Dallas area.
Awful place.
You were only there for a little while.
A little while.
Yeah.
Put my foot down, and I said, I want to go back to Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Not
but
a lot of beaches in Texas.
yeah, yeah. It was, Dallas tollway, terrible. If you left a space in front of the car, somebody would pull in front of you, and they're driving 70 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Wall to wall traffic. You see a car that's flipped over.
See you later. Got time for you.
Yeah. So
you moved back to Florida.
moved back to Florida.
When then, because you were at this point, you had obviously come to know Jesus at your mom's church, but
Yep.
taken a hiatus here. What brought you back
Here?
what brought you back to church?
Oh,
to
church.
The Lord?
I joined a church down in Tampa,
Mm-hmm.
and ended up going to Bible school 2 years down there.
Why did you join a church though? Like what?
It was close by, and I can't remember what somebody said. Come to my church.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved that church.
Yeah.
I was on the choir and
Yeah.
just saw some awesome things. A little bit churches in Florida, churches in the South are a little bit different than the North.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And it was a big church.
Yeah. There's a lot of big churches down there.
So, but yeah. So
And so what did God do with you personally in that time? What changed?
um, I just I felt on fire again.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Did you
Yeah.
see your life in a different way, like than you had before? Like as far as what was going on in her head happened?
Um, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In what way
Um,
do you think?
I had, all these little things that I would, go into the Bible school and I worked at the church. I actually made cassettes.
Oh yeah.
It was funny. The
Cassettes of like the services or the sermons and that
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember the pastor's mother worked in the mailroom,
Oh,
and
a church mailroom, huh?
yeah,
That's a big
I
church. You
mean,
got a mailroom.
huge mailroom.
Yeah.
But making the cassettes, and as I'm making the cassettes, I'll be listening to the sermon again,
Yeah.
and I remember her coming up to the door, and she stopped because she knew if she entered, that she'd be on fire again. you know, and I knew I saw her stop, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was a great church. Yeah.
Did you stay in that church the whole time you were down in Florida?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting a job with the Department of Revenue up in Tallahassee.
Mm.
So I moved up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Couple churches I went to,
Hmm.
that were up there.
Hmm.
A little similar but smaller.
Yeah. Yeah. Didn't
Tal
have a mailroom.
no, no. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So
And so how did your prayer life change?
down there,
Yeah, when you started actually following the Lord, what changed?
um, I think uh, I was I was on fire down there, and I was blessing people. I
Mm.
would listen to the Lord and prayed for a lot of people. I heard the Lord always talking to me.
Mm.
You know, put your hand on her head.
Mm.
I was at a church, and I did, and she went down in the spirit.
Mm.
One of the things that happened when I was in Tampa, going back from Tallahassee, was I had bought a new car. My mom said, "Did you bless your car yet?" I'm like, "No." You know,
Yeah.
go down, bless your car, put some oil on your fingers, and go
Mm.
down and bless your car. So, walk down, I was in an apartment complex, walked down 3 flights of stairs and went around like blessing my car, just tapping the car because I thought, oh, somebody's going to see me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I I drove from Tampa to Orlando on I-4
Mm. It's always a fun
early
road.
in the morning,
Hmm.
and was driving behind an 18-wheeler truck with wooden pallets strapped to the top.
Mm.
Brand new car, and I always listen to the Holy Spirit. Even still, I listen to
Mm.
him. And it was like, why are you driving behind this truck? A piece of wood could bounce off and hit your car.
Mm.
I drove by the truck, pulled in front of it, and looked in my rearview mirror, and the wooden pallets, the strap broke
Oh my gosh.
on the truck, and the wooden pallets were bouncing 15 feet in the air on I-4. I had, so after that, I was like listening to the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
I'll be driving down a road, and
And to your mom.
I called, yeah, I called my mom. I'm like, you're not gonna believe what just happened. But
Wow.
I'll be driving down the road, and I'll be like, no, don't go that way. Go another way.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's an inner voice that you have to listen to.
Mm.
So, but yeah. So when I was in Tallahassee, Department of Revenue there had some major changes in staff and everything.
Hmm.
And I ended up moving back to Massachusetts.
How long ago was that?
My brother passed away in 2001, and I moved back right after that. Take care of
Was
my
that
mom.
just okay? I was
Yeah,
going to say, is that a coincidence? But you needed to take care of your
care of my
mom.
mom.
What did your brother die of?
He had cancer for 3 years.
Oh.
Yep,
Did he go to church? Did he have faith?
he did.
Yeah.
Yep, and he it started out as prostate cancer, or bladder cancer, I think, and he started. He was going to church, and he helped with the big dig. He was one of the surveyors,
Oh wow.
not on the bridge part,
Mm-hmm.
but on the pillars.
Mm-hmm.
And he he was supposed to go up one of the pillars for the bridge, and he said, "No, I'm not climbing that today." And it actually fell.
Man,
Yeah. So, but
I'm gonna
we were
listen.
we
I'm
were
gonna
pretty
listen when I'm around you. Jeez.
we were pretty close. He'd
Yeah.
call me up and ask me if my right hand hurt, and I say, "Yeah," and he goes, "Well, my left one hurts."
Yeah. So when he passed, did he ever get sober, or was he battling the drink the whole time?
He was drinking,
Yeah.
and before he got sober, and he actually, I think he blacked out and was driving down the street,
Wow.
and the neighbor said it sounded like a jet car because his foot was on the gas.
Yeah.
He bounced off a couple trees, you know. So right after that, he started having seizures, and then he started drinking, and stuff too. But then he quit,
Mm.
So, but he was, I was going to the Bible school, and I went up to Orlando because they were there to go to Disney and all
Mm-hmm.
that, and they had rented some type of townhouse or something, and I speak tongues,
Mm-hmm.
and I was going around the townhouse before they were out, in Disney or something. And I was praying in every room, and I went to go into the master bedroom, and it was like I prayed in the room, and then I went to leave, and I got hit by the Holy Spirit. No, you're not done yet. Go back in that room. I mean, literally, I was pushed back into the room.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I tell people some of these stories, and they're like, "Oh, you're crazy."
Yeah.
But things happen.
Yeah. God is bigger than
Yep,
we can put him in our box
yep.
sometimes, you know?
You know,
Yeah.
but so when I was up here, going through looking for somebody again, and met another person from Providence.
How long had you been up here?
I was probably, let's see, I work for I work for a company up here, and then ended up being unemployed again.
Mm.
But I
Was your mom still alive when you met this guy?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How about your faith at that time? Sometimes did you go back to your mom's church that you had been at before you moved to Florida, or where was your? Sometimes when we move, it can kind of, we're out of our sort of, uh,
When I moved back, I went back with her to church.
yeah,
We did a lot together.
yeah,
She's been gone for 9 years
yeah,
now. My dad had passed away in '85.
yeah.
Yeah. So, but
She met a guy in Providence.
met a guy in Providence, and he said, if I move in with you, I had a house in Uxbridge.
Yeah,
I'll give you money, help pay, which was fine. He moved in and didn't work. I had cameras inside the house, and he ended up being a drug addict.
you're like, here we go again.
Yep. And it wasn't cocaine, it was fentanyl
Yeah.
at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, we're now in the fentanyl.
Yeah.
You've seen all the drug.
Thank God I never did.
Didn't experience
I
it, but
never experienced it, never will, you know. I mean, my mom and dad smoke cigarettes. I have secondhand smoke. I have this cough,
yeah.
you know. I never smoked cigarettes either.
What makes you, why do you, looking back, think now you're on fire for the Lord and clearly you're in tune to the Holy Spirit. But here comes this guy, Providence, move in. Just what, looking back now, like if you had to not judge yourself, but sort of assess why that happened again, like regardless of the drugs, but just like kind of saying, yeah, move in, let's do it this way. Like why do you think that happened?
Companionship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Just being together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I
Didn't want to be alone.
didn't want to be alone.
Yeah.
I ended up, I had, you know, two cats and one had died and
Mm-hmm.
ended up getting Finnegan. You know, everybody sees Finnegan.
Yep.
He was jealous of the dog, you know. So, but having cameras in the house,
Yeah.
I was working at assessor's office as the assessor
Mm-hmm.
up here, and the camera went off on my cell phone. He'd brought some girl into the house,
Oh,
and I could talk on the camera and told him to get out. You
did he
know,
know that the cameras were in the house?
he did.
Yeah.
You know, a couple times he did.
Yeah. Did, what did the
But
girl do when you talked to them?
she was in shock. She didn't know. She didn't know I had a camera.
Right.
You know, but I kicked him out. Police said put all his stuff out on the patio, cover it all up, have him come and get it. You know,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Mm.
yep.
What do you feel like your faith was at that time? Were you like kind of,
Now I'm backslid again. You know,
yeah.
yeah. So I'm very cautious of men.
Yeah, well, it's absolutely, as you should be. I'm one
And
of them, and you should be very. But you also, it sounds like, need to be cautious of yourself because of, we all got these things,
yeah,
these weaknesses. I just taped an online message in the book of Mark where, Jesus' temptation, but I talked about how, if you really look at, not in Mark, but Matthew and Luke, how the enemy went after Jesus. I really looked at it and I was like, if Jesus had a weak point, which he did not, but if he did, the enemy knew where he was going at. He was questioning his pride, like, oh, you really are the Messiah? You really think you're the Son of God? And obviously he was hungry. So, hey, why don't you make some bread for yourself? That kind of stuff. So it's like, that's how I look at it. It's like the enemy, spiritual enemy, knows where we're susceptible. So we have to know, like, okay, it's yes, men, because men can, but it's also me succumbing to some guy that I shouldn't because I'm lonely. And you need to, just like we all need to be aware, I know that I'm not going to be good in that situation. I need to flee from it, like you said.
right, right.
And that's kind of sounds like what you've learned, because how many years has gone by since that situation? You said it was before your mom died. Your mom's been gone
It
9
was
years.
actually after my mom passed
Oh,
away.
it was. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that
Maybe that
he
was
was on Facebook,
Yep.
and it was on Match.com as too.
Yeah.
And I've been tempted to look at, all of these Christian sites and
Yeah.
Christian dating and
Yeah.
listen, and I'm like, no, don't do that. But it was after my mom passed away, so I think that he might have seen that, too, and he knew that I was vulnerable.
You were. You just lost your mom, and not only was that your mom, but she sounds like she was a really good friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we did a lot together.
Yeah. Yeah.
She'd call me and say, would you come over and move my furniture around, because she knew I would clean her house.
That was her code. Move my furniture around.
After after all that had happened, I had a niece that didn't want didn't want to have anything to do with me, or she called him my Christian boyfriend, but he wasn't a Christian, you know.
Yeah.
And my whole family has unfriended me on Facebook or hasn't anything to do with me.
Why?
There's things that I was saying, you know, but going back and forth with my niece, and you know, they
This
were
was this stemmed from the relationship you were in?
after, like after
Okay,
the
after
fact.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. And so you got in some kind of online argument with your niece?
yeah, online, yeah, and
Was it over anything important? Was it
it was
over?
over him, you
Oh,
know, and stuff. Yeah,
okay.
she didn't want me she came to my house when he was there and for Thanksgiving, and she didn't want me to go to. My sister-in-law had a Christmas brunch,
Mm-hmm.
you know, don't bring him, you
Yeah.
know, thing. And I'm like, well, who are you to tell me it should be my sister-in-law,
Yeah.
you know, stuff.
Yeah.
But we went back and forth, and, you know, I said things that my brother was an alcoholic and he was doing drugs too. And, you know, they were like, oh, how can you, it was after my brother passed away, you know, they were like, how can you say that? He can't defend himself. I'm like, well, it's true, you know.
Exactly. Yeah,
You
we're
know,
talking about facts here, right?
I speak the truth, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I helped a couple of my nieces that actually live in Texas, and helped them when they were going to college and all that stuff, and you know, going through Venmo and like they really didn't need the money because their father was super rich with phone companies and stuff, and but you know, never got a thank you or Christmas cards from anybody.
Mm.
Just within
Did
the
you
past.
always feel like that about your family? Like it was just weird?
No,
Not weird, but
we were
just
really
so
close.
what happened?
I
Was it
think
that
that
thing?
it was that then that happened.
Okay.
You know,
And then everyone unfriended you and nobody talked and
I unfriended them and
yeah.
you know all that stuff. And
Yeah.
but I you know I have one niece lives in Texas and she's like happy birthday. I almost forgot, but that was it. You know, I just you know what I used to go on Instagram and check their pictures and see what they're doing, and
Yeah.
you know they would come up here to Narragansett during the 4th of July and never got an invite, nothing, you know, and I would see that. And I just decided I'm not going to go online anymore. I took them off of my Instagram page because they never would send any messages to me.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to be disappointed, you know, checking on them
Mm.
because they didn't do the reciprocal. You know, my mom used to say the phone goes both ways.
Yeah, it does.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep,
Relationship does too.
yep,
Still gotta hurt. It's gotta hurt pretty bad.
yeah.
Do you
So
hope that there can be something? It's hard to hope for
I've
something.
tried to reach out,
Yeah.
you know, would you like to friend me on Facebook? And she was like, no, I think I'll stay off of social media with you.
Mm.
I'm like, fine, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah. So were you never able to have children or just, I mean, obviously you were only married the one time. Were you not able to, or you just didn't want to with him?
at the time, we were having fun,
Yeah.
you know,
Sure.
and,
Too much fun, probably.
you know, and I mean, it was lack of communication for sure. I mean, he would come home from work and sit with a TV tray and supper and sit in front of the TV, watch Hogan's Heroes. Yeah.
Wow.
So, but after we got divorced, my sister-in-law had said, you know, he wanted kids, and I'm like, well, he never told me that,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, never mentioned it,
Yeah.
you know. And then he ended up having a child, You know,
Right, right.
I'm
Yeah.
like, okay.
Is it something that you wish you had been able to have kids? Are you okay with it or?
I'm okay with it. You
Yeah,
know, I had three nieces.
yeah.
I mean, I had three nieces who have two children each,
Mm,
you know, and I got to see some of them
mm,
at the time. I mean, we just had a, you know, good time together.
yeah,
A couple of the children that they've had don't even know I probably exist because I've never met them,
yeah.
you know.
Mm,
Christmas time is hard.
mm. How come?
No, with family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but I have Finnegan. I revert back to Finnegan.
Finnegan, of
Yeah.
course, your dog. How are you doing overall right now?
I think I'm doing good.
Yeah,
Yeah. I met this church. It's great.
yeah.
It's hard for me to be a huggy person. I'm a little standoffish, you know, when somebody gives me a hug. I'm like, ooh, no.
Yeah, I'm sort of like that, but I mean, I've
But
kind of gotten used to it a little bit with,
yeah.
you know,
So,
mainly our older ladies. Guys, like, I'll give you a little bit of a bro hug, but other than that,
but
and, but
yeah,
yeah,
I just love this church. You know,
it's like, you're a great example of, I tell people who feel like, oh, it's new church, I'm like, it doesn't take long granted, a church is responsible to try to make pathways to try to get people, but in the end, you're responsible for you. And if you don't join a group, join a ministry, get to know people, put yourself out there, then like there's nothing really the church can do. And you just was like,
I jumped in.
yeah,
I really did.
was so did you? Because you live next door to the Cooter family, right?
Yeah.
Which is that? Did you move there? Because you said you had a house in Uxbridge, or was it?
I sold the house in Uxbridge
And
and
because they're in Northbridge, but they're
yeah,
really close.
yeah. I sold that one and ended up buying this one. It'll be a year in October.
Okay.
And
And because you asked them, hey, I'm looking for a church, and they were like, oh,
I don't know. I don't. I might have. I said, "What church?" I think I said, "What church do you go to?" And
mm-hmm.
she told me about it.
Mm.
You know. But yeah,
Yeah, that's great,
yeah.
great to have them as
And the
neighbors.
kids, you know, the three kids, they just love Finnegan.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. As soon as
yeah,
I say you want to go see the kids when they get out of school, he's up, he's ready, he
he's ready
knows.
to roll.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because they just love him. You know, he's a people person.
yeah. Well, most dogs are,
Yeah.
they love people. Yeah.
So
So you, if someone's watching this and they think, wow, because it's not. Oh, I think pretty much every episode that I've done in Faith in the Struggle has been dealing with a specific thing or event. Divorce, alcohol, in Dan's case, a couple of couples who lost children, grief, that kind of stuff. Mark, who was in prison, it was kind of a long event, but it was still kind of like a period of time. For you, there's just been a lot.
right. Would you want to put a heading on it?
No, we can't do that. I was like, it's like when I do a funeral. I'm like, I'm not going to sum up a person. It's like a life. Like I'm going to give you like, here's how Paula, But like, especially if someone's younger and maybe they have dealt or are dealing with anything that you have dealt with. Not that you're the wise sage, but like, what is there anything you're just like, man, I would really like them to know this or to be thinking about that, anything like that you would give them?
Any advice?
Yeah, advice or just,
Come to Cornerstone Church.
probably they do, or they may not. It's got a little bit of a reach,
I
but
actually, because I live in a condoplex, and the guy next to me, he's young. He's like 29 years old, and he bought one of the, one next to me and stuff. I invited him to church the other day.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm just like, I've invited a couple of neighbors, and stuff, and called up and said, "Hey, you ready to go with me?" No, no, I don't think I'm gonna go. But I only do it once.
yeah. You're not going to be harassed,
Yeah.
especially if they're your neighbor.
Yeah,
Like, here comes church lady.
know.
And the dog.
But
Yeah.
I think if anybody wants to come and talk to me,
Yeah.
because they are going through something,
Mm.
I'm welcome to sit and talk with them.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be in the public.
Right.
You know,
Right.
we can go for a cup of coffee, and I'll bring my tissues, because I go through a box. I was crying before I even got here today. And I was early, so I went around the block, and I'm like, I'm too early.
Oh gosh.
But
You can come to the church anytime.
yeah,
Well, I really appreciate you doing that, because if someone sees this and maybe they haven't come forward, or maybe they feel like, you know what, I have, it seems like every relationship I get into, it goes badly and I don't know why, you might be able to give them some,
yeah,
at least just a listening ear.
yeah,
But I think one of the overall lessons is like, because in your life, when you looked at some of these things happen, when you had kind of backslidden, or when you didn't put God first, and that you are not all, in fact, you probably all of us at some point or another, that's when we make, and it's not just because the Lord, we're not thinking of the Lord. If you're not in community with others, it's like there's times where you need to be strong, and there's times where others need to be strong for you,
yeah,
especially if you're by yourself,
yeah,
right? You're by your, living by yourself. So it's like, it's easy to recede or make decisions and drift away, and maybe a few people will notice, but it's just easier to do that.
yeah.
But it's dangerous.
Mm.
What we talk about all the time. It's like the nature shows. It's the isolated zebra that gets attacked.
Yeah. Well, I think I am, what's the word? I'm I'm proud of men who, if I'm talking to them, they say, my wife. It's
Mm,
not like I'm hitting on them, but they include the conversation as, oh yeah, my wife did this, my wife said this.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I'm so, I don't know if the word is proud, but
We respect it.
respectful.
Yeah,
Yes, very,
yeah.
yeah. And, somebody says, you're beautiful, and all this stuff. And I look and I see a wedding band on their finger.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, thank you, but where's your wife?
Yeah, that's not an appropriate thing to
Yeah,
say to someone.
and and maybe that they do that. That's something that they do. But I
It's
felt like I
probably
was being hit on.
it's probably something they shouldn't do, though.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Just a general practice out there,
and
especially men. Like if you, regardless if you're married, that's not a great opening line
no,
at church anyway, or really anywhere. Like when like I just think we just need to get to know each other, and maybe there'll be a time and a place, if it's an appropriate situation, where to say something like that.
yeah, yeah,
Because I think it's important to know, like, we don't know what people have been through, and regardless, like, we know your story now, or at least part of it.
that was very hard for me to talk about it today.
Yeah, but so if you don't know someone's story, whether it's just, whatever it might be, you don't know, like, what. Yeah, I've tripped up, not in that way, but like, I've said things to people because I'm and overall, I think it works to like tease people, or to like, because I want people to know I'm a regular person. I'm not the stiff pastor that you can't. And so I like to use sense of humor and all that. And I'm usually good, but there's been times where I've kind of stepped in it a little bit, because I just didn't know that even that little thing is going to trigger something for them that's going on in their life, and I become sort of part of that
Mm.
antagonism. And so we can't dance like around eggshells with people, but we do need to be careful about how we approach people, and how, because you just don't know.
Yeah,
And of course, you've had some things, and trust is going to be hard.
that trust. Yeah, there's,
Well, your radar also goes up too.
yeah,
for good reason.
I shared my story before, with a couple weeks ago, and and his wife said, "There's more."
Right. Oh yeah, yeah. The bakers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Because I mean, you look at them; they've been married 65 years, something like that, right? It's
yeah,
like so that they have their own story and their own stuff. Everybody does, but it's not that, right? Because
yeah,
they've just been together
yeah.
all that long.
And they shared their stories with me too,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff. But yeah, I but yeah, definitely, it was if if anyone had their past like I did,
Yeah.
or if they've been vulnerable to guys that were drug addicts or whatever, I just want to just say, please come and see me.
Yeah.
I'm not a counselor,
Right. Right.
but
But it's a
I
good
can
first
pray
step.
for you too.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. That's what we're
yeah,
about. The church is
yeah,
about. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I hope that. I hope people are willing to see how important to have those relationships it is. Tell your story to somebody. If it's not you, it's not me. Somebody who you can trust.
yeah,
Be careful who you're doing that with.
right,
But you need to share what's going on with you, because otherwise you're gonna try to bottle that up.
yeah. And that's what I've been doing for
Yeah.
I don't know how many years,
Yeah. Yeah.
so 65 years, 64 years.
And also recognizing within the church community, really anywhere, but for our sake, when someone is alone, to really be, and I think people are pretty good about that, but it's to be reminded, like, I always am. It's like we can take for granted going home to a family or to a husband or wife or whatever. Um, and there are actually challenges that sometimes you don't have to deal with because you don't have to deal with all that. So there is some good things about being alone, but there's also some real serious challenges around the holidays, things like that. And so, like, invite somebody or ask how they're doing, and don't assume that they're fine just because they're smiling,
Right.
because they may not be.
Yeah.
So this hopefully will really kind of remind people to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for through the tears having the courage to tell us your story, and God's so faithful.
Yeah.
Here you are, and just trusting in the Lord, and regardless of what happens here, He's got the next thing for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually went to another Bible school up in North Reading too.
Did you?
2 years up there.
Watch
I
out.
was living, up there in North Reading. I was one of the assessors there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was awesome too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's gracious.
Yep.
No matter how far we run, He's reeling you back in.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I did sign up for one of the sessions that you're going to be having soon.
The 2-7 series, maybe?
Yeah.
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 That's a great series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I
That's
have
really
have that book and yours too.
Oh, yeah, that's a book.
So
Study
I've got
guide.
them. I've got them on my love seat. Okay. Which one first?
Yeah, the 2-7 series gives you a lot of, but I recommend it. I do.
Yeah.
It can get a little, homework can get a little much,
That's the hardest part is memorizing a
Yeah.
verse.
but you do your best.
yeah.
That's it. As we get older, our brains aren't quite as spongy anymore.
I know. Okay. What did I read? I remember, and I don't know if this is true again, but I'll have to do it. But I remember reading the Bible, and I was like Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and I'm like, I read this before,
Yeah.
but it was the same story,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, okay.
See, your mind's still working.
It is, yeah. Sometimes. Oh,
Well, once again, say hi to Finnegan for us,
I will.
and
Yeah.
thank you again, and put that offer out there if anybody who's around and needs someone to talk to.
Yeah.
Paula's here.
Okay.
Right?
I'm
She'll be
here.
taking pictures
Yep,
somewhere
taking
near you.
pictures. Yeah. I felt lost last weekend. I didn't have a camera behind. Standing behind a camera.
Put a camera around you, people let you in. So
Okay.
thank you so much
Thank you.
once again. Thanks,
Yeah.
Paula.
Thanks.